Frazier, Gaines, Gallagher, Cristina Garcia, Eduardo Garcia, Gatto, Gibson, Gomez, Gonzalez, Gordon, Gray, Grove, Hadley, Harper, Hernandez, Holden, Irwin, Jones, Jones Sawyer, Kim, Lackey, Levine, Linder, Lopez, Lowe, Mainshine, Mathis, Mays, McCarty, Medina, Melendez, Mullen, Nazarian, Obernolte, O'Donnell, Olson, Patterson, Perea, Quirk, Rendon, Ridley Thomas, Rodriguez, Salas, Santiago, Steinorth, Stone, Thurmond, Ting, Wagner, Waldron, Weber, Wilk, Williams, Wood. Madam Speaker.
I'd like to ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand up for today's prayer. Today's prayer will be offered by our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papademos. Father Papademos.
Thank you. Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, after a while, we begin to realize that most days are not going to go exactly as we planned. But if we get upset, help us to release the things that have offended or disappointed us so that we can live in peace. Lord, you have created us to live in peace. It is our position of power. Help us to keep the sense of peace that you have given us, knowing that with you beside us, our best days are ahead. Amen.
I'd like to ask our guests and visitors to please remain standing for the flag salute. Today's pledge will be offered by Assemblymember Chang.
Let's pledge allegiance to one of the greatest symbols of freedom, liberty, and democracy. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Monday, March 2nd, 2015. The Assembly met at 12 noon. Honorable Tony G. Atkins, Speaker of the Assembly, presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dotson-Wilson at the desk. Reading
Mr. Holden moves and Ms. Olson seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions, there are none. Introductions and references of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Members, we're now at motions and resolutions, the absences for the day. For legislative business, Member Wood. Let's now move to procedural motions. Mr. Holden, you are recognized for your motions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 and allow Assembly members Kansan-Chu, Gomez, and O'Donnell to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 and allow Assembly members Gomez, McCarty, and Medina to speak on adjourned memories today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Assembly Rule 96, I request unanimous consent to re-refer Assembly Bill 35, David Chu, from the Revenue and Taxation Committee to the Housing and Community Development Committee, then back to Revenue and Taxation Committee.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Colleagues, let's now go to guest introductions. The first guest introduction will be by Assemblymember Kansan-Chu. Mr. Chu, you prepared?
Thank you very much, Speaker and members of the Assembly. I rise to introduce Director General Bruce Fu and Brian Penn of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in San Francisco. Their office is one of 13 representative offices for the Republic of China on Taiwan in the United States. Their mission is to promote trade, cultural, and tourism between Taiwan and the United States. Tyco San Francisco office, which located in Assemblymember David Chu's the district, covers all of Northern California, Oregon State, Utah State, and Nevada State. Since 2012, Director General Fu has been a respected advocate for the welfare of Chinese community throughout his district. It is only fitting that we celebrate the first full moon of the Lunar New Year, 4712, and the year of the Ram, that we recognize and honor the valuable contribution that Director General Fu and his colleague has dedicated themselves to. Please join me in welcoming them on the floor, and please join us for a reception upon adjournment in room 125. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, we have a number of other guest introductions, which we will defer till later in today's session. Let's now go to business on the daily file. Assembly, third reading, file item 1. If we could, without objection, pass and retain. Let's move to the consent calendar. Does any member wish to remove an item from the consent calendar? Seeing none, the clerk will read the second-day consent calendar.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 10 by Senator Huff and others relative to the Lunar New Year celebration.
It's pretty loud out there.
At this time, the clerk will open the roll on the consent calendar. All those who vote, who desire to vote. All those who vote, who desire to vote. This is on the consent calendar. All those who vote, who desire to vote. All those who vote, who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. The ayes 70, nays 0. The consent calendar is adopted. This concludes the business on file. Why don't we now move to announcements and adjournments in memory? The following members were granted prior permission to speak on an adjourn in memory. Let me ask Mr. Gomez. You are recognized at your desk. Why don't we pass over Mr. Gomez and go to Mr. Medina?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I would like to adjourn in memory of Cushy Jones, the wife of my friend and fellow teacher, Eddie Jones. Cushy was born in Burbank, California. She worked in banking at Victoria Community Church for 10 years. Upon earning her master's degree in counseling ministry, she was a counselor for nearly 20 years at the California Baptist University. She was also very active in her church community and was said to be a very gifted singer who never knew a stranger. She is survived by her loving husband, Eddie, her mother, Marcel, and nieces and nephews. I respectfully ask that we adjourn in her memory.
Thank you, Mr. Medina. Why don't we now go to Mr. Gomez?
Mr. Speaker, members, today I adjourn in memory of Larry Scanlon, an organizer, a teacher, and a leader in Democratic politics. Larry was born in Kingston, New York, and eventually grew up to become a graduate from the University of Notre Dame. Larry began his career in the union movement in 1974 as a field representative for the 300,000-member New York Civil Service Employees Association, ASME Local 1000. In 1995, Larry was appointed to be the political director of ASME International in Washington, D.C. Over the next 15 years, Larry's successes in empowering the members grew almost daily and yearly as they fought campaign after campaign all over the country, helping organize and empower workers. Larry retired from ASME in 2012 as the political director, but remained active in political consulting. Mr. Scanlon displayed immense pride in his work and felt strongly that if labor doesn't survive, this country won't survive. On a personal note, Mr. Scanlon is the one who recruited me and hired me to be a political rep for ASME International, and I got to serve with him through the 2008 campaign, starting in Iowa and spending almost 300 days on the road in 2007 and 2008. And I saw union members from across the country working to elect a president, first trying to elect Hillary Clinton, and then a president, Barack Obama. It is something that I learned and something that stays with me to this day. And he taught me a valuable lesson in politics, and maybe I'll definitely share it with you one day. But it was he gave me the insight to help me run for office when I actually did. And if it wasn't for that one piece of advice, maybe I wouldn't have jumped in the race in 2012. He passed away last Saturday in a car accident, going to visit some friends and family in Florida. His wife was badly injured, but she survived in the accident. And so his legacy will live on through his wife, Margaret Reynolds Scanlon, 2 children, Larry Scanlon III and Sarah Scanlon, and a brother and 3 grandchildren. And for the Speaker Pro Tem here, he's a big, big fan of Irish pubs. So this is for Larry Scanlon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Our final adjourned memory will be by our colleague, Mr. McCarty. Mr. McCarty, you're recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With great sadness, I rise to adjourn in memory of a great Californian, a wise voice for education, and a friend to many, John Mockler. John passed away this week at the too early age of 73 from pancreatic cancer. He was born in Michigan, but moved to California and San Diego. He later attended the University of San Francisco and UC Santa Barbara, where he graduated with a degree in economics. In his various positions with the state of California, he served as Secretary of Education and as the Executive Director of the State Board of Education. He also served this House with distinction. Under Willie Brown, he served as the education consultant for the then Ways and Means Committee. He was part of the movement to professionalize our legislative policy staff, where he served on his so-called all-star team of committee staff, which included Phil Eisenberg, later an Assembly member, and late Steve Thompson, who went on to work with the California Medical Association. He also later served as a chief education advisor under Willie Brown. In 1988, he was the author and chief architect of Prop 98, the landmark school funding bill for our great public schools in California. He also helped craft the everlasting Cal Grant Entitlement Program of 2000. All those important things are a part of his life, but his friendships and family are what we reflect upon today. I wanted to share a few memories and impressions of John from his friends. From Rick Simpson, the Speaker's Chief Education Advisor. Back in 1998, when we were negotiating SB 50, the Major School Facilities Finance Law, John sacrificed his partnership in his lobbying firm because he thought the new policy was right and his firm's clients were wrong. From Greg Lucas, his friend and our current state librarian, who wrote a moving obituary this week in the Capital Weekly. He said, John Mockler drove fast and lived hard. He loved to laugh and even highlighted this in his resume. He was frequently irreverent, sometimes irascible. Hypocrisy and stupidity were particular peeves. From Joe Nunez, Executive Director of the California Teachers Association, a longtime friend. His legacy is felt by the enrollment of every kindergartner and the graduation of every senior class. From his life partner, Carol Ferris. He spent his career fighting for education in California. He devoted his brilliant mind, courage, and wit to, as he often put, stealing money for our kids of California. His generosity grew no bounds. His mentorship and counsel bettered countless lives, colleagues, family, and friends. And finally, for me, I'll remember him as a friend, a man who clearly made his mark, someone who loved the game of policy and politics, someone who always made people laugh, a great storyteller, and a man who loved and was loved dearly by his friends and family. He is survived by his life partner, Carol Ferris, 2 children, Robert and Jessica, 5 grandchildren, Willa, Clara, Sydney, Zachary, and Auden, and countless friends and admirers. Again, Mr. Speaker, I ask that we adjourn in his memory.
Thank you, Mr. McCarty. Mr. Cooley, for what reason do you rise?
In honor of John Mockler's memory.
Without objection.
Colleagues, it is an honor to stand here and remember John Mockler. We are so privileged, of course. We hold elective office. We sit on this floor. But we are supported by just countless individuals who have a devotion to the future of California, to good policy, who sort of labor in the fields in support of our efforts here. And John Mockler was an exemplar of this type of person. He was a Coro Fellow early in his career. He touched issues that did not involve education. In 1964, there was a ballot proposition that would have allowed a discrimination in real property sales based on race, actually. And this caught his interest, and he worked hard to fight that before he found his education groove. We talk now of Prop 98. He was the chief architect of that. But he stands out as someone who eventually came to Sacramento, devoted to public service, found a place to become the foremost expert in the land, and devoted a long career to that. And I think his is the sort of life, rather like Dan Wall, who we remembered a few weeks ago, who stands out as someone who labored in the trenches alongside elected officials, made a profound difference in our state. And it's right to honor him here today on this occasion of losing him, and to hold him up as an example of the sort of staff that we depend upon in these public institutions to enable us to make the sort of difference we'd like to make with our lives. So a great, great contributor to our state, and an honor to rise in his memory.
Thank you, Mr. Cooley. Members, please bring to the names to the desk to be printed in the journal. All requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Colleagues, if we could go back to our guest introductions. We have a few more guest introductions today. I'd like to recognize Mr. O'Donnell for your guest introduction at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to honor one of Long Beach's great ones. Today with us, I would like to introduce Iman Marshall. Let's give him on a hand, a student and football star from Long Beach Poly High School in my district. One of our great jackrabbits right here. Iman has distinguished himself as one of the nation's top cornerbacks, earning 85 tackles and 16 deflections during the 2014-2015 season. He consistently demonstrated his remarkable talent, dedication, and skills not only as a remarkable football player, but as a student in academics. Iman boasts a 3.2 GPA and serves on the Long Beach Polytechnic High School's Student Commission. Iman received offers from countless football powerhouses and recently committed to attending USC in the fall. This guy may be in the next Rose Bowl. All right, there we go. Go Trojans. So please join me in welcoming one of Long Beach's great ones, Iman.
Colleagues, I'd like to move to our next guest introduction, if we can. Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it is my pleasure to welcome the operators of the electric grid of Chile. Chile has a mandate to serve 20% of its demand with renewables by 2020. The delegation will be meeting with the California Independent System Operator to discuss how deployment of advanced system dispatch is enabling California to reliably meet the 33% renewable mandate. They are also joining the independent energy producers on a tour of geothermal, wind, natural gas, and storage facilities. Please join me in welcoming Raul Moreno Tonaria, Patricio Valenzuela Vasquez, Sebastián Campos Flores, Ricardo Cristian Samuel Pacheco Mella, Jorge Carlos Vargas Caceres, and Javier Renato Urbina Fuentes.
At the end.
Colleagues, concluding today's meeting, why don't we move to announcements? The session schedule is as follows. Friday, March the 6th, no floor session. No check-in session. Monday, March the 9th, floor session at noon. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions will be continued. Seeing and hearing no further business, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Garcia moves and Ms. Waldron seconds that the House stands adjourned until Monday, March the 9th at 9 a.m. Quorum call is lifted.
Perfect.